Where do you think the price of ETH heads if we look to the rest of 2025
I think it can double from here. I think you can see a 7 to 8,000 ETH.
before the end of the year?
I think so, yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Jen Sanasi, and this is your Markets Outlook. I'm joined today by Rail CEO and co-founder and the managing partner and CIO of the digital asset fund at Round13 Capital, Satraj Bambra. Hey Satraj.
Hey, Jed, good to meet you here.
Yeah, good to be with you here. Happy Monday. Okay, Satraj, a little bit of an exciting weekend, especially for ETH. What are you watching this morning?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is you're seeing the sort of the bullish effect of the regulation sort of hitting in. I think the 401k retirement accounts being added, like crypto being added to that. And just the fact that you have this institutional sort of money entering the space at record speed. I call it sort of the Saylor effect that's happening. It's happening in Ethereum now, and that's really pushing the prices up.
Let's talk about Ethereum because for a long time it was very much lagging behind Bitcoin. Bitcoin was really the outstanding performer, and ETH is really kind of taking the baton there. What do you think's driving the ETH narrative right now?
I think it's like what you see with like Sharplay Gaming, Fundstrat. You have this institutional buying of ETH that's happening at record speed now, and I think that's what's really pushing the prices up. So you have this infinite bid coming in with all the stock sales, and I think this is all just getting started.
Where do you think the price of ETH heads if we look to the rest of 2025
I think it can double from here. I think you can see a 7 to 8,000 ETH.
before the end of the year?
I think so, yeah.
I was reading this morning that 97% of ETH investors are now in the money. I'm assuming if that many people are in the money, we may see a small pullback before we head there. But just talk to me a little bit about, I guess, the journey you're watching for ETH before we see the price double.
I think we probably would go to 4,800. I think all the previous all-time highs around there, close to five. I think that's probably a good profit-taking spot for lots of people. And I think once we pull back from there, it's probably going to be shallow, and then we'll go back to new highs.
Midnight is a privacy-enhancing blockchain, introducing vital, programmable privacy and selective disclosure capabilities. It means dApps can allow users to control what information is revealed without putting sensitive data on-chain, allowing you to break free from the limitation of choosing between utility or privacy. We deserve more when it comes to privacy. Experience the next generation of blockchain that is private and inclusive by design. Break free with Midnight. Visit midnight.network/breakfree.
Let's turn to Bitcoin now. Got dragged along after failing to budge for a while, like I mentioned. What's your outlook there?
I think Bitcoin is also very bullish. I think you have lots of factors that are sort of pushing that are just that's so Bitcoin's kind of made for this moment. You have debasement at sort of I think the US national debt like 37 trillion now. So I think debasement is written in the cards, it's guaranteed. It's going to keep happening. So that by nature is going to keep pulling Bitcoin up. It's now widely accepted store of value. It's digital gold. And with that sort of running in play, you have all these institutions buying it through their sort of stock offerings. So you have this bid, you have this low supply. I think Bitcoin is going to go up. Like it's on its path to go vertical.
What's your target?
So I think anything between 200 to 400, I think I want the more bullish at 3 to 400 sort of level.
What needs to happen for us to get there?
Whatever sort of kickstarted now, I think that's sort of what's it's going to keep happening. I think the other thing is I think we're going to be entering into some form of low interest rate environments over the next 6 to 7 months. So that's just more fuel to the fire.
You mentioned regulatory tailwinds shortly at the top of this interview. I know that you are a little bit cautious on the regulatory front. I'd love to dig into that a little bit deeper with you. From a regulatory perspective, what are you watching and what should investors be watching?
Right now, it's probably the most bullish you can have in a regulatory environment. But I think a lot of people confuse sort of like the deregulation for no regulation. I think that sort of is eventually going to come back in some way or form, especially when you have a shift maybe during the midterms or something like that. So I think that there's a golden period that we're in right now that people are obviously taking advantage of, and you can see it's reflected in the pricing. But eventually, at some point, I think the music's going to stop like it always does, and you're going to have sharp corrections in the journey.
Tell me a little bit more about that. You said there might be a little bit of a shift around midterms. Tell me a little bit more about what you're watching for. Does that shift happen if the Clarity Act that everyone is waiting to get signed, doesn't happen before midterms?
Yeah, I think there's also that. I also think there's like a bit of a geopolitical shift happening around like the transition from capitalism to socialism. We'll be watching like how the New York sort of plays out in fall and if Zoran actually wins. And that's a big shift to the most capitalistic state in the world, I think, New York. So I think seeing that may sort of signal what's happening in the midterms next year. And I think socialism and a move to that tends to be bad for like risk on assets. So if you sort of see those trends, I think at some point at next year, the prices would come down heavily as if you had that sort of geopolitical shift.
Tell me a little bit more about that, the shift from capitalism to socialism, how that might affect risk on assets, and what happens in that scenario. Paint a picture for me.
So I think what happens is now you get the complete opposite of what you're seeing right now, where I think then if that begins to happen, you see regulation making a big comeback. So now it's a lot more looser than it ever was, and it's a lot more adaptive, and it's letting the industry thrive. But I think it has been an attack in the past, and I think when you sort of go into that factor, you're going to start seeing regulations getting stronger and heavy again, and I think that tends to be a negative for the space.
Tell me a little bit about regulation making a big comeback, because you say stronger and heavier regulation. I think this industry is feeling like they're able to breathe a sigh of relief after a period of very strong and very heavy regulation. There are pro crypto folks in almost every top position when it comes to regulating the space and creating policy in this space. So, talk to me a little bit about how that turns back to what we've seen before.
Yeah, I think it only really turns back if you have like a shift in government, what 2028 looks like. But I think if you have like sort of the Democrats taking back the House, which obviously at this point seems unlikely, but if that happens, then you start seeing the stoppage of all the big crypto sort of bills getting passed through. And I think everyone sort of takes back on the risk. So I think Bitcoin is in a separate category here. It's going its own sort of journey. And I think as the debasement keeps rising up, Bitcoin will just keep going higher and higher. I think the 1 million per Bitcoin is definitely going to happen at some point over the next 4 or 5 years. But I think with the rest of crypto, there is a lot of speculation. There's a lot of non-fundamental value gain that happens. And I think that gets crushed when you have that shift back to a more regulated environment.
Does Ether fall into that category?
I think Ether's sort of in between. I think there's a lot of fundamental value in ETH, like a lot of the stablecoin volume. But I think there's other tokens that are not in the same sort of category as ETH and maybe Solana that will not benefit from the rise for what they have benefited off in the last sort of 6 to 7 months.
I would love to hear your perspective on cryptocurrencies outside of Bitcoin and Ether. I mean, what are you watching there in the short, medium, and long term?
I think everyone sort of talks about an altcoin season. We haven't had that yet. And I think there's just too many tokens to have like a all-rounded sort of altcoin season, which we've sort of had in the past. It's very fragmented. You have memes, you have different tokens, you have tokens coming up every day. I think stuff that the regulation does benefit is fundamental sort of tokens that where you can accrue value back to your holders, where revenue sort of comes back to them. I think those things tend to do better into the long run, but stuff that's meaningless eventually just has a ride and a die. And I think that it just never comes back. So that sort of is going to repeat. There's also limited capital right now. Interest rates are still high. Until they go low, I don't see like us having like a major altcoin season. It's just going to be like little pockets here. So if Ethereum's going up, stuff that's related to Ethereum is going to probably go up and other stuff's just not going to move.
Talk to me a little bit about your outlook for lower interest rates as we head into the second half of the year.
Yeah, that's interesting. So I think that at some point, Jay Powell probably is either going to resign or it's going to get replaced or something like that's going to happen. And I think that going with the current administration, they're going to force on lower rates. Everything I have seen so far is whatever is said tends to get done in one way or form, and especially when it's around financial stuff. So I think that we enter into a lower period of interest rates some point next year. That obviously takes all these risk on assets very, very high. The risk with that is you get stagflation, especially with the levels of debasement that we're having. So I think that, yes, you have a big run up. I don't think you have a sustained run up. Eventually, it all comes crashing down.
You say eventually it all comes crashing down, and we got to just stick on that for one more moment, because I think people hear that and they maybe start to get worried. When you say eventually it all comes crashing down, just tell me what you mean. I know you touched on it at the beginning of the interview, but just take us home here.
So I think non-fundamental crypto, a lot of speculative value. As people sort of trade the market, we always know that our goal as traders is to accumulate more Bitcoin. So we don't tend to hold on to altcoin positions for very long periods of time. I think that that changes, especially when you have altcoins that can drive value back to your token holders. And I think a lot of that good stuff's coming and it's going to be benefited from regulation, but stuff that's just meaningless and is maybe just speculative community movements, those things are not going to last for a very long time. So they just keep going in cycles anyways.
All right, let's talk about Rails now. It's a hybrid crypto exchange to bridge security, speed, and transparency. I believe that it's been live for just over 2 months now. Talk to me about what's been going on the platform and how you would characterize sentiment amongst traders based on activity.
Yeah, so we spent about 2 years building Rails from the ground up. And I think how we sort of viewed it when we were building it is like we're building just a tech product for traders, and crypto was just a tech stack that we were adding. So crypto obviously as a tech stack has matured a lot since the last 5 or 6 years. And what you're getting with Rails is the benefit of sort of both worlds. I think you get the scalability and speed that comes with a centralized sort of matching architecture where your order matches and scalability is all centralized. And then you have the on-chain custody. So there's no black box for user funds. It's all transparent and it's secure. So I think when you sort of add those two tech stacks together, you get a really good product in the long run. We're obviously very young. We have a lot of work to do to ensure our thesis is proved. But what happens is when you have a decentralized exchange, as they actually get more decentralized, they get slower and harder to use. And I've sort of gone through that sort of variation myself. And when you have central exchanges, you remember what happened with FTX. And at the end of the day, the platform is responsible for sending funds to you. There's always some form of risk in that. So I think that those are the sort of the two problems we're solving. And I think as we begin to grow and as sort of regulation catches its balance, we would end up benefiting from those sort of tailwinds.
$1 billion in total volume in less than 60 days. Congratulations. That's an
Thank you.
incredible number, an incredible milestone to hit. Talk to me a little bit about what's behind this and how you anticipate that momentum to continue.
What we did is we built something really good. It's out there. We're trying to grow our liquidity, but the people that tend to come and join and use us, they tend to stake in and they sort of deposit more funds to trade. So I think it's just you're seeing like a very small version of product market fit sort of happening and people trading actively. So I think we're very excited about that. On the other side, we want to be a platform that has hundreds of billions of dollars in volume. So we're still very early. We have a lot of work to do on our end, but we're sort of happy with the start.
Satraj, thanks so much for joining me today. It's been a pleasure hearing your insights.
Awesome. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Satraj.